We would like to talk about hope today. When dark times seem to be looming for the foreseeable future, we thought it would be a good time to stop and reflect on people and moments in our past that exemplified hope and what those stories can teach us about resiliency and grit. Humans are made for community and collaboration. At a time when the powers that be are trying to convince us how different we are here to remind you that we are 99.9% genetically the same. We are being polarized by an elite class that are simply rebranding that old language. Divide and conquer. Today, we will be talking about how we can unite through hope and action. We welcome you to this conversation to make it make sense.
So yeah, I think this is an excellent topic to talk about today because of all the darkness that's in the world that we're seeing and feeling right now, not only locally but on our state level, nationally, and globally. What's happening is just hard to find hope, and it's hard to find a way to fight against this in a proper way. We have to keep in mind this is not the only dark time in our lives, nor will it be the only dark time in our lives. And it certainly is not the only dark time in our nation's history. And we have to pull from the people in our past who have fought through darkness on many occasions. It's well documented, and find what inspired them and what brought them forth. And I think it's fitting that here we are just at the start of spring. We are all dressed in spring colors today, and we are going to focus on how to bring ourselves out of darkness with hope and inspiration and progressive thoughts and ideas, and talk about some of the things that we know have happened in the past, pull and be inspired by those people. Well, it's just like it during the Civil War and what happened at the Civil War. Okay, going into the Civil War, the country was torn apart. We had pro-slavery and anti-slavery. That was the basic issue. Of course, they call it all other things, states' rights and all this other bullshit. If the black citizens of this country rolled over and called it quits after the events of April 14th, Abraham Lincoln's assassination, where do you think we would be now? I mean, their fight has been relentless and has been nonstop since that point, and they still are facing the same kind of racism and suppression. And I mean, that's what the SAVE Act is all about. It is to suppress voters. It is to remove black voters and women voters and Democrats from the ballot. So, darkness has been in our country for a long time. And I'm inspired when I read stories about people who have rose up in the past and have fought against racism and the people that I see today. And I understand it's very hard to find hope right now, extremely hard. But when you have friends like this, there is hope, and you are inspired, and you guys know this. I'm inspired by both of you. This is why we are doing this podcast. This is why we came together, because we have three thought processes that are similar, but man, we have different approaches to it.
Well, look, education and history are important, right? Like I just saw an article, I think it was this morning, about her name was Charlotta Bass. And it was super interesting because she's just a normal person, African-American woman, grew up in not such great conditions. Turns out that she moved to Los Angeles because she had asthma and she thought it would be better for her health. And when she landed in Los Angeles, she saw that there were some serious race issues going on. A lot of the police force, a lot of the legislators were even part of the Ku Klux Klan. So when she had an opportunity, she was working for a newspaper, and that gentleman was getting ready to retire. So She took $50 with her that she had borrowed from a local store owner to purchase this paper. And then over the next several years, she was using this newspaper as a way to combat the Ku Klux Klan and to try and encourage African Americans to be able to get into the workforce and to get into places where they weren't allowed. And I don't think a lot of people know those stories, and we should be talking about that stuff more, because here's just this normal person, this normal lady that just did some extreme things. And turns out, even after the newspaper, even after she sold it, when she retired in 1952 at 68 years old, she decided to accept the vice presidential nomination of the Progressive Party. And isn't that interesting? And anyway, I just find people like that fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great story. And let's talk about James Cameron, who is a Hoosier. His parents left Virginia after the Civil War. They moved to Indiana because they wanted a better life for themselves and for their future family. James has not been born yet, so they moved to Indianapolis. And then James was born, and the family started to prosper here in Indianapolis, but weren't aware of the racial tensions that were in our state and what they were going to be faced here. James is one of the three individuals who was lynched in Marion, Indiana in 1930. He's the survivor. Okay. He was beaten near death, but someone in the crowd yelled he didn't have anything to do with it, which none of them did, and they let him down. But he was still jailed for 4 years. He was charged with multiple counts. This man rose to become a huge advocate for racial violence and racism in our country. He founded, I think, 4 different ACLU chapters across Indiana and in the Midwest. And his biggest achievement was he created the Black Holocaust Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This guy was amazing, and he was a Hoosier. So there are many stories like that that we can pull from throughout history to find hope and inspiration. The strength that the people had in those times was, I mean, unbelievable. Some of the stories that you hear, and what happened after the Civil War with, after Lincoln got assassinated, I should say, and with that dickhead Andrew Johnson getting to become our president, who was a total failure. Um, it's just astonishing that the blacks were the reason the Reconstruction happened. They were the reason. They were the ones that were building the churches and were building the schools and were becoming politicians and running for office. They knew that they had the support of the radical Republicans at that time, but they were basically, in essence, the Democrats that we know today. They were not they didn't use the term progressive. They were more forward thinkers is what they called them. And so with the support of them and the Congress vetoing some of the bullshit that Andrew Johnson was trying to pass through because of his alliance to the South, which, an interesting fact, he was the only Southern senator that did not align with his state when the Confederacy was formed and they seceded from the United States. So that's one of the reasons that Lincoln picked him as a vice presidential running mate, is because he thought there would be some unity that he could bring to voters and give a sense of hope for the citizens of the country. And one of their messages was that the Confederacy doesn't speak for all Southerners. So yeah, I think all of that history is great. So
Yeah, and just going off of what you said, absolutely, Black America has always led the charge to trying to make America live up to its founding ideals and principles. Even in the example of, Abraham Lincoln, he isn't really this great emancipator that like my son learns about in school. I constantly am trying to re-educate, if you will, my son, and this notion that Abraham Lincoln is this great emancipator. He actually didn't believe for inequality for black and white Americans. He actually saw black Americans as this plague that would constantly disrupt white America. We will constantly fight because the black people and white people, we are not equal in his mind. So it is really Frederick Douglass behind the scenes who is constantly pushing forward. Abraham Lincoln is not a bad guy. the notion that blacks and whites cannot mix is very common in this time. It is actually more radical to assume that we are all just humans. That sounds insane, I understand, but that is the time that they live in because, race is a social construct that we created to divide and conquer based off of colonialism. It was just a way to understand why white people of European descent got a bigger say in democracy and in this project than the natives who were literally born here or the African Americans that we bring over here against their will and that actually build this country. But time and time again, it's the Black Americans in this country who push us forward and say, "Hey, these are your founding ideals. This is what our founding ideals are. This is what our country was supposed to be about. Let's try to get there." And even Abraham Lincoln, as progressive or forward, as you're saying, forward thinking as he was, his forward thinking was forwarding our Black brothers and sisters to Liberia as part of the American Colonization Society. But to your point, there are always amazing Americans like Frederick Douglass who are behind the scenes pushing to try to make us live up to these ideals.
Well, let's talk about some other amazing African Americans that we had, like the Black suffragists, for example, that don't ever get enough credit. So I'm going to give a shout out to some of them for any of the kids that may be watching that are interested in this sort of thing. So we have people like Ida P. Wells-Barnett, Mary Church Terrell, Sojourner Truth, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. We've got Nannie Helen Burroughs, Marianne Shad Cary, Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, Daisy Rampkin, Mary Burnett Talbert, Harriet Purvis Jr. I mean, those are just a few. I know it sounded like a lot, right? But I think that we should draw attention to things like that because right now, I do think we're seeing a resurgence of this matriarchy that we should be aware of our past with that and we should join forces. And I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with a young African American woman, and we were talking about how we need to get youth involved and like the older generations, which I said, I'm of an older generation now, and I have younger people that I'm seeking advice from. And I said, how do you think that I can be most helpful? And she said, honestly, just keep telling the truth. And she said, for example, a lot of people don't know that we have a big homeless problem in Terre Haute. And I think that's because we have a young mayor who's probably doing the best that he can, but of the resources that we had before, all they seem to be doing is putting in more hotels, putting in a casino. But these are not resources for people that are suffering. And she said she feels like a lot of the African American youth is being left behind. And so now apparently there's a large influx of homeless in Terre Haute, which I was not aware of. And she said, yeah, like they're going on campus and, trying to get food from the students and stuff like that. And anyway, I just say that to say, I think we need to draw attention to these issues and start to have these larger conversations to find ways that we can advocate for one another. Because you're right. The African American community has always been strong and we need to follow their lead.
Shout out to Ida B. Wells. I love her. She is a Chicago woman, strong Chicago woman who was a suffragette, yes, but originally she wasn't. Originally, she started as an investigative journalist who wrote about lynchings in America. And for that, I stand her forever. I even had a Barbie. I have a Barbie doll of her in my office because she is an amazing woman in history for sure. But to the homeless crisis, yes, we don't have enough houses in Indiana. We just don't have enough houses per the amount of people that we have. And we are not investing in building houses. We are investing in other things and bringing companies to Indiana and trying to bring economic opportunities to Indiana, which is hilarious because we're going to bring jobs, but we're not building houses to house the people that we have in the state, let alone the people that you are theoretically going to bring from these jobs. So that
Well,
that
and
is we're not just homeless in Terre Haute, but homeless in Indianapolis, homeless everywhere because we just don't have enough houses.
and you were talking with your or speaking with your son about history and what's being taught and everything. And this is how history has always been taught in our country. It's a whitewashed version of history, and they really don't tell the truth. It's just like we were taught George Washington had wooden teeth, which is just fucking absurd. I mean, but anyway, that's the way history is taught. And it has a tendency to focus on figures that are popular in name, like Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King and some others, that I'm missing. But it's really those non-known figures, those names
Shout
that
out
we aren't
Polly Murray.
yeah. It's those type of people that you've never heard of before, or their names are not within our history books, that we need to focus on. But also do your due diligence and dig into, like, Harriet Tubman. The story of Harriet Tubman, uh, they don't really tell you exactly who Harriet Tubman is. She was a fucking badass. She didn't take shit from anyone. She would stand in a room of men and tell them, this is how it's going to fucking be. And men followed her, and white men were scared to death of her. And
Right.
look at what she was able to achieve over the years. And she never stopped. Even though they knew who she was never stopped from doing what she was doing that whole
She's a
time.
perfect example of resilience and grit, that woman.
Hope, inspiration, just amazing. Just, you sit back and say, wow, what an amazing individual. Rosa Parks and the sit-ins in Mississippi and Birmingham and those places. The kind of courage that it took people to do those kind of things, it's just amazing. You don't understand. We're talking about, time frame where lynchings still were occurring. Maybe not as much as they were occurring, 10, 15, 20 years prior to that. But, they're still occurring today. We have stories that come out. So the courage that it took these people to stand and fight for what they believed in, we need more of that today. And I think we have seen that in spots and with people around our country, and we're starting to focus on a lot more of them and bring them forth more. And one dude right now that I have a great deal of respect for, who is just pounding the pavement strong against this regime, is Cliff Cash. He is organizing. He is speaking out. He is spending a shitload of his own money. He is somebody that will be remembered in history. His work and what he is doing right now will be remembered, and he's somebody that I support 100%, and I'm inspired by the shit that he's done. Relentless, fearless, not
Well,
afraid to say what he fucking thinks. I
I
mean,
love that you
he's like,
mentioned Cliff.
yeah, he's like, you want to come after me because of what I'm posting on social media? Come. I'll give you my fucking address and my phone number. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. He's an amazing dude. So
he was at that veterans protest that I took the kids to. I think it was March 2025. And I had followed him a little bit before that.
he was one of the organizers.
Yeah, he was one of the organizers. I got to hear him speak. And this is why I get so irritated by people right now trying to, like, hush the movement, right? Try and just, like, put a cap on it. And predominantly it seems to be white people. I'm not saying only white people, but I just think that has to serve their purpose, right? Because, like, here we have all of the African Americans throughout history that have been so fiery and have inspired us, and we just need to do that.
Yeah. And I've had some conversation with Shonique Williams, who's running for Congress in CD 41 in California, and I learned a lot about her from her at that time. And one of the terms that I was not familiar with, but she brought up on a couple of occasions, is skin folk don't mean kinfolk. And I just thought that was great, because
That's it, Kurt. I've heard that before, and that's it.
yeah, people need to understand what that means, and what she's talking about are the the Kanye Wests, and I
But
can't
on our
remember
side too. I mean, on our side too, skinfolk don't mean kinfolk, right?
Exactly. You're right. It's not just a racial thing or a color thing.
Well,
It's across the board.
I'm
So
finding that I think that's what makes me uncomfortable, right? And so, yes, we've always been two countries. Like, we've had the people, irregardless of skin color, that were more of, say, like the abolitionists. And then we've had the other. And there's always been that struggle for hope and morality and they're always butting up against one another. And I think, here we're revisiting again, right? We were complacent for too long. We were too comfortable for too long. And we let all of these tensions rise to the surface again. And obviously, certain people in power were not pumping the hope. You know what I mean? Like the division was made clear. And for those people that were already frustrated, that already couldn't grasp where they needed to go because they were suffering so much, certainly not trying to make an excuse for them, but it just made it easier, is what I mean. So this is why I thought hope would be a good thing to talk about today, right? Because like hope is work. Like Rosa Parks didn't just make that decision that day. She wasn't like, oh, hey, today I'm going to do this. No, this
And she
was
wasn't even the first to do it. So.
exactly. But
Right,
this was
right. She's
years.
just the most
Yes.
She
famous
was just
one,
the
yeah.
most prominent figure to do
Yeah,
it.
Exactly.
yes.
But
There
this
was a Polly
this
Murray
was
that walked before her.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
But like this was a
Because it's a
movement
team sport. Yep.
that was years in the making.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
boom, one thing happens that's the catalyst. And now I think this is why we need to talk about hope, because we know this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. We need to find out who our allies are, surround ourselves with them, educate, inform. We really need to start investing in our youth so that they don't have an opportunity to indoctrinate them and push them away from hope because things are so dark right now.
Yeah, I think it's important that we find the people that are pushing forward and are being the forward thinkers or are being the progressives in this country. We also have to pay attention to the organizations and companies who are also doing this. And I just want to mention right now, I wear this dark yarn apparel. I wear this hat quite often. I am an advocate for them. I do not get paid. It's not anything that I'm making any money on. I just believe in their cause and what they stand for. It's an apparel company, and let me tell you, a high quality apparel company. They're not Temu price shit, okay? But every purchase that you make has an impact donation that they give to organizations around the country. And right now they're giving to Minnesota. But their whole thing, the dark yarn thing, is the darkness that we all face within our lives and how we're intertwined that way. And that's where the knot in their logo comes from. They have a philosophy, that, well, I'll just read it to you. When we face darkness head on, we stop avoiding the work required to solve it. Avoidance delays solutions, confrontation creates them. Dark yarn is about meeting the problem directly in ourselves and in society. And I think that is a powerful message that people need to understand, that is the one of the common threads that we all have. Is darkness in our lives. We all experience personal tragedies. Some of us are born into personal tragedy and live it our entire lives. And some of us just have events that occur. And it's hard for people to share those things or to know that about someone. We just assume someone, when we look at them or meet them or talk to them and they're happy and they're positive, that they've never had any hardships in their lives. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. We have to remember they're human beings. And the chances of them having darkness in their life or having times that they have struggled are highly probable, if not, 100% guaranteed. So this is why we have to pull on hope and inspiration, and why we have to be positive. Even though there are times when we get up in the morning and all we think is, I need a cup of coffee or I'm not going to make it through the day. Well, drink that cup of coffee and get to it, because we're in this together, and when we have unity, we have strength, and that's the thing that I always try to pull on or try to realize and understand and believe in, and I understand it gets hard. It's it's definitely a struggle at times. So, but this is the only way we're gonna move forward. So
Well,
Just to build just to build off of that hope, yes. And the other part that's important to fighting fascism, I know that most Americans also, the problem they have with fighting fascism is they don't even have this word in their lexicon. They don't really know what this word means. So, like fascism, authoritarianism, dictatorship, they have these negative connotations, but because Americans don't have this in their lexicon, they just know it's bad, but they don't know what it looks like. And Umberto Eco writes a fantastic piece called Fascism. He grew up in the time of Mussolini, so when fascism is being created. And he explains that fascism isn't necessarily a strict adherence to an ideology. It's a loose based coalition of ideologies that come together and band together to make this stronger thing, the fascio or fascism. So it's everyone coming together, banding together to make the thing stronger. Which is why it can be so loose, and you can say, "Well, Trump's a fascist because X, Y, and Z," and then a Democrat, establishment Democrat, can say, "Well, fascism is a really hard word, guys. Whoa, because it's not really X, Y, and Z. It's actually like A, B, and X." And Umberto Eco is like, "Yes, it's all of those things. It's a checklist, and you don't have to check every box. It can be pieces that you check off." But part of fighting fascism is hope, but it's also radical love. Like truth telling, yes, that is important, but people will and won't see the truth. They see the truth, the small t truth as they see it, however that fits their narrative. But just radical love is enough, especially when fascism works so hard to depress you, to make you sad, to isolate you and make you feel like you're in this alone. Just having that radical love for another person enough to be like, I will listen to you, vent to me on a voice note for 5 minutes about your shit life. That's okay. My life's shit too. Let me send one back. That radical love and camaraderie, or, giving your cup of sugar to your neighbor, just that radical love is enough that breaks fascism. And it sounds so lame, but this too shall pass. Human history it's a long arc, right? So there are times where this ebbs and flows, and this will go too. It's flowing right now, but this will ebb. And so we just have to work as hard as we can with hope and with love to try to keep as many of our community members as safe as we can, and to not get crushed by the machine of fascism while it is rolling through town, because it is, and it will. But this too shall pass, and we can go back to some sort of Pax Americana. And I know that some people are gonna be like, well, when was that? I don't know, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
let's work together and figure it out.
I was just going to say, I'm so glad that you brought up fascism in Italy, because I had some notes on that too. So some more shout outs, because I wasn't even aware of this. We had something called the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. And in 1936, they went to Franco's Spain to fight fascism before we, America, entered World War II. So you had, I think it was 3,000 Americans. They were workers, artists, and students that all went over there. And it was on their own. It wasn't like part of a government thing. These were just normal people that were like, right, we're going to go do this thing. And then, you have Langston Hughes as well, the poet and activist who traveled to Spain to document and to give a Black African-American perspective. And I think we need, like you said, Kurt, with Dark Young, like we need to draw these threads. And I think we can use these stories to help educate the youth, right? Not just them, give us hope as well, but to show them, hey, there were always Americans fighting fascists, like just normal, everyday Americans. And how can you be that? What can you do in your life that you can fight fascism?
Wasn't Langston Hughes co-opted by the CIA to help perpetuate that? That wasn't him. That was the CIA.
Well, look,
Nina,
I
because
mean,
they approached Nina Simone too, and she
I know
said,
I
"Big
am not
fuck
an
you,"
expert on
and I love
everything.
her for that.
Not an
Sorry,
expert on everything.
jazz history is actually like a weird thing that there's a great PBS documentary you should watch on history of
Yeah.
jazz. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I just wanted to, expand on what you said about, yeah, my life is shit too. And I know you don't really mean that. Okay.
No, it's just hard
You're,
out here for a pimp.
yo, no, yeah. But I know that, you're blessed with many things in your life, and it's the moments that are shit that we struggle with. Some of us just have many moments during the day or many moments in our lifetime, and others don't. But I know that deep in your heart, you don't feel like your life is shit. I mean, I don't think anybody does really. But I'm also wrong about that, because I can't say that, I don't know what everybody's life is. In fact, I shouldn't say that, because I'm sure there are people who have
We
lives
should
that are
restructure
shit from
that.
start to end. Yeah.
We should
And this
restructure
is
it.
where this is where I struggle a lot with things. I know what I feel and how I feel, but sometimes when I go to say those things, I don't maybe put the right word out there. It's just like fascism.
Of
I
course.
think people are drawn to the word fascism or fascist because if you look it up, if you Google it, It's a right-wing ideology is what it says. And so I think people hook on to that when really what we should be saying all the time is white supremacists, because that white supremacists, that's who these people are. It doesn't matter if it's Mussolini. It doesn't matter if it's Andrew Johnson. It doesn't matter if it's,
Well, that
Donald
hurt gets
Trump,
the
who
heart to the heart of everything because actually,
exactly,
yes, because the
exactly.
thing that we don't talk about with the Nazis is that white supremacy is their basic ideology. We talk about that, but for what? Because it's not, and even in America and in South Africa and apartheid, it's not white supremacy for white supremacy's sake. It is
Mhm.
white supremacy is the thing that helps you to justify the subjugation and colonization of lands. I mean, the Germans
Right.
did. The Third Reich wanted to colonize the surrounding lands and establish a bigger Germany. It was also a land grab. And the
Mhm.
people get in the way. This world Jewry gets in the way. These things are thrown out as reasons why Jews are uncivilized. So it's our job to actually, as white Christians, because the Germans were extremely Christian, they go and they go, well, I have to bring white Christianity and save these people, and the Jews, political opposition, gays, they just get tossed into a concentration camp because you can't actually save them. So
Mhm.
I like what you're saying. We have to call it white supremacy because white
Right.
supremacy is in service of this settler colonial project. And that is why we have white supremacy in America and why no matter how hard we try to deracialize America, it's not going to work until we also understand and try to rectify this decolonization of America. I'm not a genius. I don't know what that means and what that looks like in practicality, and scholars and historians still are arguing about what this would look like. But we have to reckon with the fact that race was literally constructed to justify why I, as an Englishman, or I, as a Frenchman, or Dutchman, or Spaniard, get to come over to America, come to the East, I know Asia, come to Africa, and why I now get to own your resources, own your land, and kick you out of here. And it is all because I am civilized and I am coming to bring you civilization because I am white and you are literally any other color. Because white doesn't necessarily mean alabaster skin like me. Irish
Right.
people were not white. And in fact, Irish people, the reason that they have such solidarity with Palestinians is because the Britons colonized the Irish first. I mean, it was the Protestants colonizing the Catholics, and they are speaking Gaelic. They don't understand their language. They are not seen as white or civilized in the eyes of the English. And so they do brutal colonialism there. And then we as Americans, back when we're colonies, we see what they did in Ireland and we're like, that's sick. We could do that actually better. And so Americans, the revolution, more of a rebellion than a revolution. I know we call it that, but the Americans, as we understand, were not trying to throw off their colonizing oppressor so that they could be free and let freedom
Mhm.
ring throughout this land. That is the nationalist lie that they tell you because you need nationalism to justify a colonial state. Nationalism, colonialism are together. They're tandem twins. You cannot separate the two. So they need
Yeah.
that nationalism to justify and that racism to justify this colonial project that they do. The founders were just saying, fuck the French and the British, we can colonize better and we can actually get more land because the British were not interested in going further. They in fact made a bunch of deals with the natives and the indigenous population. We won't come further of this mark. And the land surveyors, George Washington and his ilk, are like, yeah, fuck you. We're actually colonizers. We're going to take your land. We're white people and we're
Mhm.
civilized, and you are uncivilized redskins. And so now we'll scalp
Mhm.
you, we'll ethnically cleanse you, and push you off into reservations. And that's what we're going to do. And we actually create settler colonialism in America.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
Brits create colonialism. We do settler colonialism, and we perfect these tools that then they take and export to Africa and to the Middle East and to everywhere else. I mean, the reserves in Nazi Germany come from the reservations in America, and
Right.
the Boostistans, I'm getting that so wrong. The reservations in South Africa and for the apartheid come from our reservations of the native population here. So, like,
Well,
just to tie it all together, it does. It's
yeah.
part and parcel. We will never be able to deracialize America until we decolonize America because we need white supremacy to justify the colonization.
Yeah, and it's always been there. And I think the connection, to tie it a little bit more together for you, the reason, another reason why the Irish can relate to the Palestinians so much is because the conflict in the British Isles between tribes, okay, has a history almost as long as what's happened in the Middle East. And so I think that connection there is not just something that is a recent, it's a history, a mankind history that has taken place. And you're mentioning of Hitler and their philosophies and what they did. Where did he get his ideas from? Where did he base his plans and his ideologies on? Where did he get all of those thoughts?
From Jim Crow South, and how we decided to handle the native population with our
Well,
reservations, and
Exactly.
we stripped natives and Black Americans of all of their rights, of all of their legal protections. And
Ex
I mean, so yes, he looked at how do Americans control the native population and how do they control Black Americans. Well, this is how they do it, so this is how we'll do it.
and
and so
also
you
eugenics.
wonder throughout history how many
Yes.
white supremacists have followed that kind of playbook that the Americans, the colonizers developed. How
Odd,
many
because
of
as
them
I
have took
yeah,
that?
because settler colonialism was established in America, and to Tabitha's point, eugenics, yes, we had to build a legal system in order to and institutions in order to strip these people of their rights. Eugenics comes in as a way to justify the legal system that we have now
Mhm.
built to strip them of their rights and essentially make them nobodies in this land. And then we say, "But look, this is the rule of law, this is civilization, this is how we do it," while we are actually legalizing brutality and violence and the killing of others, the subjugation of others, but we call
Yeah,
it civilization, and I think that that is insane.
I also
and
want to mention something.
one of the things you experience as you get older is that you forget shit that you've read like 20, 30 years ago. And I remember, and I can't think of the guy's name. He had a white beard, and it was, I think, in the early 1900s or late 1800s, who uh, just a massive genocide took place in Africa. Um, uh, and I can't remember. He had
Are you talking
a
about King
The
Leopold
yes,
there you go. Yeah,
the
there you
Belgian
go.
king.
in
Uh,
the Congo? Yeah, in the Congo.
yes,
Yes.
yes, there you go. I mean, I can't remember the number I read, but it was like, are you fucking kidding me? And very few people know the story or who this guy was. And, those kind of things have happened. I mean, the stories and the events that have taken place are a mile long when it comes to white supremacists in the world, and
Yeah, and
you
that's all
know
just because some Belgian asshole was like, "Yeah, the Congo has a lot of rubber and natural resources. That's really great for my little kingdom. Belgium needs this." Not that Belgium was actually the people weren't getting the benefits of this colony, right? Just the Belgian king is getting the benefits of this
right.
colony. But it is insane that they just walk around thinking, "No, this is my land. I'm going to take it." And okay. Says who? Says you? Yes, I'm white. Like,
Mention
imagine being an African and just seeing a white dude come onto your land and just be like,
Yeah.
"I'm
Well,
here and I know how to take care of your land better than you." You're like,
it
"Good
didn't it
fucking
just
you."
come out that Trump and this regime told Somalia that they're going to cut off HIV aid to them if they don't turn over I mean, I can't. I read something, or something came out this week that was brought forth. I can't even
Yes,
remember if it was Somalia, but
there is a lot going on in Africa right now that big powers are playing at because they see the writing on the wall. Two things: the natural rich, obviously, which is since the 1800s, right? What we're talking about, natural
hmm
resources. But also, while everywhere else in the world is seeing a decline of population, we're seeing an aging population and a decline in young people. The opposite is
hmm
happening in Africa. We are seeing a boom of young people, hungry people, people who are ambitious, who are intelligent, who are ready to take the world by storm. They're building markets and stuff. You can see it in Nairobi. You can see it in fuck, I can't think of the other place at the moment, Nigeria's capital. It doesn't matter. The point is, you can see it all over Africa that there are young people with startup companies, tech companies. They are movers and shakers, and the rest of the world is aging. And instead of looking to Africa and trying to figure out how to work with this global power that is coming up, because it is. I mean, the sun is setting on it's set on the British Empire, it's setting on the American Empire. We are going to have another power somewhere in the world, and I think that people are not looking at Africa seriously and not taking this continent seriously. But it is an aging we have an aging population and it is a young population, and I think that we need to be paying more attention to it. But the power players, like you're saying, are the US is we are withholding aid and trying to stifle any kind of growth that these places can have. You see Israel trying to get in and inflame sectarian splits, like in Somalia. It is a failed state. Mogadishu cannot control the entirety, so you have Somaliland in the north that was colonized by the British, and then Somalia was the south of it. It was colonized by the French, and so you have that Anglophone Francophone split. And so Israel comes in and goes, I recognize Somaliland as a state. And in doing so, Somaliland has now a lot of admiration for Israel. So when they take things to the UN and say, you can't support a Palestinian state, and they put it up to the member nations, then, Africa falls in line, Cameroon falls in line, Somaliland falls in line. Rwanda, Israel is actually, and so are we, all over the continent of Africa
Hmm.
doing these kinds of goodwill missions, but not goodwill in the way you and I would think through like
Right.
USAID, but through like specifically with Israel. The Israeli government is supplying military weapons and munitions to the Cameroonian government, to the Biya regime that has been an authoritarian dictatorship for 30 years. They claim democracy, but when you have elections where they are rigged and the same president wins since 1982, it's 2026. Is that democracy? I don't fucking think so. But that's not the point for Israel. The point is to have a friend on the international community and the international stage who will say, yeah, I don't recognize Palestine as a state. I recognize only Israel, because that's all this really is. It's colonization just playing out all over the globe. And that's another thing. I just think that Americans, we don't have this in our lexicon. We don't talk about colonization because we're a settler colonial project and we never want to rectify that. But also just because we like to think of history as this dead thing. It's done. History is done. It's set in stone, and now we just study this thing that is forever stays the same. And I just think that is such an insane way to approach history, because
Yeah.
obviously it isn't done.
Yeah. Being
Like,
a history buff, I had a friend tell me one time, history is worthless knowledge. And I wanted to punch him right in the fucking face. I was like,
yeah,
you're,
because
you're an
I
idiot.
mean,
You're
yeah,
an
you're just
idiot.
seeing history
Well,
play again.
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
it back to hope, though, because all of that is great information, right? But some people might be like, shit, that went dark fast, which is, horrible in
Part of
real
hope.
life. But Malawi is doing something really cool. Like, they have Joyce Banda is their new president, and she's actually walking the walk. So we could use her as an example of, say, like a progressive president, that she, I think, sold like 30 of the presidential cars. She took that money to buy like grain and food and invest in her communities and stuff like that. And people in Malawi love her. So, if we start to have like collaborations like this between the US and nations in Africa, for example, that are doing the right thing, that we can use it as an example and build off of those partnerships and be like, you know what? We actually kind of want to be like you. Like, you're doing something great. We can learn from you. And I was also going to say that if we can convince people in the US, I mean, we can't do it all over the world, right? But if we can convince people in the US that white nationalism serves no one and they will be the ones that suffer, that would be good. Because I just read an article the other day talking about the beaches of Normandy and the cemeteries over there and how more Americans should visit to see the miles of graves. And that not only do we have a shit ton of soldiers that died there, when you go to the German side, they were putting them 2 per grave. And I think their cemetery is like twice the size of ours. So Germany, as an example, bouncing back to what you were saying earlier, Sierra, once they got rid of everybody, and then they wanted to do war. Who do you think they sent? They sent the white sons of Germany, because that's who they had left after they were done exterminating everybody and they were warring with everyone else. So this extreme white Christian nationalism, for example, that we're letting play out again here, and we're busy putting, Hispanics in camps and all this sort of thing. For, say, the MAGA base, for example, their sons and their daughters will be the ones that suffer. In this war with Iran, they will be the ones that suffer. So I think part of our, hope and education would be to appeal to people in the U.S. and be like, right, we have examples throughout history that are bad, that don't serve you. So maybe you need to rethink how this project is working in your mind.
Well, and for those people who can't make the trip to France and go to Normandy, I suggest going to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and standing in the graveyard there, and realizing, just have a moment of silence, because that's what I did. I went and stood in the middle of it, and just seeing the massive amounts of graves and headstones, and understanding that was all unnecessary, but it was all caused because of white supremacists in the South who demanded that they have the right to own another individual as their slave. And so it will move you beyond means, or go to Bloody Lane to Antietam. And, you read history books, and after that battle was done, there was a soldier who said he could walk from one side of the road to the other without stepping on the ground. It's a sunken. I mean, when you think about things in that magnitude, it just is unbelievable, and you've got to realize that it was all unnecessary. It should never have happened, but it did because of white supremacists,
I definitely
white
think that,
nationalists.
yeah, we should definitely be telling people white nationalism doesn't serve them. But who it
Yeah.
does, because who it does actually serve, because again, nationalism and colonialism are tandem twins. They cannot be divorced from each other. You need the nationalism to support the colonialism, because nationalism thrives off of ignorant people who say, "But I'm white and
Hmm.
I'm a nationalist to America." Sure, but not my son or daughter. So, meh.
Hmm.
So like connecting it to them is like, well, right, but who do you think benefits from nationalism, white nationalism? It isn't you, because yes, your son and daughter, but who? If it isn't
Right.
you, who?
Yeah.
Who is the elite ruling class that need white nationalism and white supremacy to work in order to keep all of us fighting about who's the white person that benefits, who's the white person that doesn't benefit, who is the other group, who is the outsider in this situation. We constantly have to divide and conquer and break people up into groups, into, if race doesn't work, we'll do religion. If religion can't work, we'll do ethnicity. I mean, we're three white Hoosiers sitting right here, but look, there's ages. We'll break you off into ages. Well, Kurt, you're an old person and I'm a young person. And actually, do I want to work that hard to take care of you, or whatever they say, dumb shit they say about Social Security? They'll break us
Right.
off on age, right? They'll break
Yeah.
us off on gender and say, okay, well, we're two females and you're a dude. We're trying to
Yeah.
take something from you because we want to have feminism and that actually hurts you. They will break us any way they can. It doesn't matter if it's race or not, because at the end
Look,
of the day, they need colonization to work to benefit the elite ruling class, which is something every fucking one of us can get, no matter what little box you're in. We all can get behind the fact that we are working class people struggling, and these elite assholes are trying to find any fucking thing that they can to be like, see, you're different. You're not them. You're a temporarily inconvenience to billionaires, so come fight on our side. You're
well,
one of the good white people.
let me tell you something from this 62-year-old's perspective, okay? Real men wear pink, okay? Real men are feminists. Real men will shed a tear. That's who real men are. These motherfuckers that call themselves alpha males are weak ass sucklings, okay? Who have a complex, an insecurity about themselves, and that's why they project what they do. So to hell with all that. You wouldn't believe how many times on my social media contents I get people tell me, get a job. Like I'm retired. fucking worked on my life.
I had
So
one of those. Thanks.
yeah. What do you want me to do? Go flip hamburgers? I mean, get the fuck out of here. Just shut up. And so I know we've talked about so much darkness, but there's a reason that we're talking about it. It's because with darkness, there is light. Okay. Again, we find, like I said earlier, and we've all said, we find inspiration and hope through the dark stories that have happened, and understanding that people persevered and they survived, and they became stronger. You know, uh, one of the things that I love to share, and I've put it on a post, and I've said it before, in order for the light to shine brightly, the darkness must be present. And that is so true. And we will never get away from the darkness. It will always be there. It's just, what are we going to do about it? And where do we find inspiration? So, wearing spring colors, and having a smile on your face, and, spending time with your kids and your neighbors and your family, having conversation. Go out and plant some daffodils. Plant a white rose this year, people, because the white rose is a signal, as a um, uh, emblem, or I'm losing the word,
Symbol of
but it
resistance.
symbol of resistance that
Oh,
was
it's a white
created.
one here.
The white,
In Middle Eastern
yeah.
culture, it's a red rose. I didn't know white roses was symbol of resistance here.
Well, the white rose comes from Sophie, losing her name, the resistance that was against Nazi Germany in 1942.
Okay.
Sophie Scholes and her husband and her brother created a group, and they fought fascism, fought the Nazis, and they were executed. So the white rose is the symbol of fighting fascism. So plant a white rose, or plant a red rose. Plant a fucking rose. I mean, plant some flowers. And there's, Tabitha shared with us this morning, there was a great post that a guy made, who he's really good. He's a Southerner, and he simply sits in his kitchen and just tells you like it is, but he talks about daffodils in the ashes. And so maybe we can share that link here so people can go check that out, because it's really a powerful, uh, statement that he makes. Um, so yeah, we talked about darkness a lot, but also, we've talked about inspiration and hope. So
I think there were a lot of hopeful messages in here talking about radical love. Tabitha brought us a lot of good people throughout history, and those people
hmm
are amazing. And they had amazing people surrounding them and behind them, pushing them forward. So takes all of us.
Because
Takes
this
all
is
of
a
us
we'll,
team
having
we'll
sport.
yeah,
conversations
absolutely.
and radical love and hope.
Yeah, and it's never something that's going to happen overnight. This is something that has to be done on a daily basis. And the word progressive is not possible without progress, and so that's what we are all about. And the list of people that Tabitha has shared with us, or given to us, we'll go ahead and put it together, and we'll drop it in the description here so everybody can look at these individuals and do your own little research, because obviously we don't have enough time to talk about every single one of them, but maybe in the future we'll isolate one or two stories and we'll share that with you. I think talking about some of these people that have connections with Indiana is absolutely important for us three Hoosiers to do. Um, so yeah, I hope that we gave some hope today, and that we shared some things that can be done to inspire all of us, and shared some people with you guys that can inspire all of
Well, and I
us.
just want to tell people from Indiana, my family's been here for a very, very long time, right? Yes, we do have a lot of bad stuff in Indiana. However, we have always had this bedrock, this undercurrent of resistance and abolitionists and people that fought slavery and people that hid people on the Underground Railroad and all that stuff. We have that here too. So maybe dig into that American history, dig into that Indiana history in particular. Find out what happened in your region, because I would almost guarantee you will find resistance in your city somewhere.
Absolutely. And we'll share some of those stories in the future. We've got a lot of things to talk about. That's one thing that you can guarantee with the three of us. we are not short on conversations or topics to talk about. The text chats that we have, and we like to use voice messages in our text chats, and I have to laugh sometimes because I have a tendency to make 2 or 3 minute ones. Tabitha and Sierra, hell, I'll get 16, 17, 18-minute long text voice messages from them. So
he gets a personal curated podcast.
I love it, you know. My wife looks at me and it's like, what are you listening to? Oh, Tabitha, you know. So it's just funny, but you know,
Like she's on
we
another
just
rant.
yeah, but we just really feel honored that all of you take the time to listen to our pod, and are starting to like our page and leaving us comments. You know, we would love it if you would subscribe to our page and share the information that we are talking about with your friends and family, and tell people about us, because we simply are trying to take the topics of today and discuss them, break them down, and dive into them, and just try to make it make sense for everyone. So my name is Kurt.
I'm Sierra.
And I'm Tabitha.
And we will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for joining us.